The county commissioners gave $15 million to a private developer from out of the state who built an 8-story tall building, give or take a block from the courthouse downtown.
Sharon, thank you for coming today.
Thank you for having me.
You brought a huge binder, which tells me that you have some things to talk about there, which is great because one, I like hearing about local issues, and two, a lot of people that I've talked to, there's such a theater in the national stage and other states with problems and things that are going on that the conversation very frequently veers off to be other things. Mm-hmm. And it seems like you did not bring other things. It seems like you brought things pertaining to Ada County. So you're running for commissioner. You've been commissioner twice before. Mm-hmm. Talk to me. Let's go.
Well, the biggest problem I see right now is spending. I think spending is out of control. It didn't just start a year ago. It started several years ago. It started a decade ago, where Ada County, for example, contracted to have a brand new coroner's facility built, more than $46 million for this project. And before they even broke ground, there was a building that came available right next door to what was then the current coroner's facility. It was on the market for $8 million. It had been used to manufacture fire engines. It was a good-sized facility on a good-sized piece of land. It had high ceilings, so if you need to drive an ambulance or a hearse into it, it already has the roll-up doors, and the county could have gotten it for $8 million. Now, I don't know what it would have cost to remodel it and, put some office space. I'm sure it had some kind of office space in it already and whatever kind of equipment they need for the coroner's office. But the project, let's say that cost $5 million. We could have done the whole thing for $13 million, not $46 million. We, the Ada County taxpayers, now have a $30 million debt still owing on that facility that was built from the ground up in Meridian. And a lot of people are not aware. Utility bills at the old facility, the highest one I could find over the most recent 1-year period was about $3,000 for 1 month. In the new facility, this beautiful structure with its glass all around, $9,000. So the utility bill has tripled in the new facility. That's an ongoing cost we will never get out from under. We haven't even hit July and August. I'm guessing that utility bill is going to go even higher before all is said and done. So we've not only now got this $30 million debt that I would like to see the county get out of as quickly as possible. We didn't get to vote on it, and we've got higher utility bills. Government needs to be functional. And there have been a lot of decisions made in recent years where the county commissioners have done something from the ground up. For example, I know people are thrilled there's a second place they can go get a driver's license now in Meridian. Again, signed onto a contract. We're leasing the building for 20 years. We will not own it at the end of that period. We will have put $5 million into it. It's functional, yes, but why didn't we ask that the sheriff work with the county assessor who has DMV sites all over the county? The DMV sites, you can go get your title or your registration. You can't get a driver's license. The sheriff is the elected official whose people issue driver's licenses. Why didn't we have the two elected officials work together instead of, again, starting from the ground up, having a building specifically built for that purpose?
Did they have a rationale for that? Because, I mean, if it's literally just like, hey, let's get the sheriff and the assessor together and like, we don't need to spend all this money, that's a great, I mean, did they have a justification for that?
I am not aware of a justification. I know that there was a desire to, I don't know, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, whenever it was that driver's licenses were brought into the central location over on Benjamin. I know there was a desire of the sheriff at that time to have just one facility. And granted, it's a hassle for people who live in Star or Cuna, for example, to drive into that one facility. The new facility is only 4 or 5 miles to the west of that, though. It's not like the assessor has a DMV site out in Star. So again, wouldn't it have made more sense? I mean, that's my question. I wasn't on the board at the time that decision was made. But again, I'd like to get out from under that 20-year lease. We've paid on it for 3 years, give or take. Can we maybe buy the building instead of pay for 20 years and still not own it? That doesn't strike me as good government. That's not a good decision on the part of the board that did it. And again, not the incumbent. He's been in office for 15 months now, give or take. He didn't make these decisions, but we need to be, the board in general needs to be making better decisions, I believe.
Gotcha. So are you in general a bigger fan of using capital outlay and purchasing things that that come with maintenance, but also the long-term viability of something that you're not leasing, as opposed to not putting capital out and then just leasing in the near term? I
think it's more beneficial to taxpayers. Usually, I mean, I can't say that there would never be a situation where leasing, wouldn't make more sense. But I mean, those are a few examples of things. Back in 2018, the county commissioners gave $15 million to a private developer from out of the state who built an 8-story tall building, give or take a block from the courthouse downtown. And in exchange, we now that the building is built, get to use 220 parking spaces for county employees during the day. We are now receiving 2.17% return on the $15 million investment when they lease those spaces to the other occupants of that building. I think we can do better in this type of an economy than a 2.17% return on our $15 million. And why would you pay $68,000 per parking space for parking spaces downtown? Again, better decisions could have been made. The county owns land adjacent to the courthouse that we could have built our own parking structure if it was needed. Better yet, we have land out at Expo, Idaho. Have the employees who need to drive in park at Expo, Idaho, and shuttle them in. How many times can you shuttle how many employees before you get anywhere close to spending $15 million? Why do we want all these cars of county employees driving downtown anyway? Traffic is already bad downtown. We have an inversion in the winter. Air pollution is bad. So many of these things could have been done without doing it the way they did.
Gotcha. And I'm sorry, my ignorance on this one. So you're saying that the county commissioners gave, as in like they will never receive back $15 million. So what's the 2.7%?
The 2.17% is I submitted the public records request, and looking at the amount of money that the county has been receiving for the leasing of the parking spaces to other private parties, they have received, it amounts to 2.17% in the 1 year period I looked at.
So 2.17% of the 15 million?
Of the 15 million.
Okay, so they essentially gave this money, but then got the parking spaces in exchange that they're now using as revenue producing assets.
Yes, and we don't have to operate them, so that's good.
Okay.
We just receive the income that, from the private operation.
Sure. Okay, so they give the, and I'm sorry to get hung up on it. They gave the $15 million, and in exchange for the 15, do we have these parking spots forever, or do we just get them for a certain amount of time?
We have them indefinitely.
So we essentially bought how many parking spots?
220 parking
Okay, so we essentially bought 220 parking spaces, and we're getting roughly around a 2% return on the investment.
Correct.
But we have those forever. So your position is that it's kind of like, hey, this is not the best investment. Yes, we're in the black with it. Mm-hmm. We're making about a 2% return, but we could have spent that money somewhere else and gotten better than 2% return on a bunch of parking spaces.
Or just handled the situation a whole lot better. As I say, why do you want 220 county employees driving into downtown Boise if they don't have to be? COVID was an interesting experience. I had been talking about telecommuting for years and years. It's been renamed. It's now called work from home.
Yeah, right.
But you know what? There were a lot of county employees who were actually able to work from home. My husband and I had a small claims case, and we literally sat at home, and I believe probably the judge and the court clerk were at the courthouse. But all of the people who participated in cases, they did not have to go in, park in inexpensive downtown parking space. There are better ways. Let's take the lessons from COVID, from that experience, and keep making that available.
Speaking of the courthouse is one of those things that people have been talking about, which is, hey, look, that this is desperately in need of upgrading. One gal that I was talking to was saying, hey, look, they've essentially taken small like broom closets or other rooms and made them into fashioned offices out of them. Nobody likes to spend more money on something that, look, especially courthouses and whatnot, you're like, I don't want to spend money on another courthouse, just deliver judgment via Zoom or some other way. What are your thoughts on investing more into our courthouse?
Well, the courthouse opened halfway through my first term. I objected to the financing. Again, it was one of these long-term lease purchases. My second term, they were non-contiguous terms. Even though we were not taking the allowable 3% property tax increase every year, and my 4-year term, that was years 4, 5, 6, and 7 of the county making this decision not to take it. And it gets harder every year to make ends meet without some kind of an increase beyond the new construction roll.
Sure.
We were taking, if there was growth in the county, and there wasn't much those years, 2009 to 13.
Right. I was going to say that was a time when property values were not going up for it.
Well,
not on skyrocket. I mean, they dropped considerably, right?
Property values only your assessed value determines your share of the tax burden. When property values rise, if everybody's property value in the entire county doubled, your taxes would be the same because the levy would be cut in half. The thing that drives your property taxes higher primarily is the spending. It is the budget. It is government making these kinds of decisions. And I've been listing some of the big ones. There are small decisions too. There are 2 commissioners who attend the Boise Metro Chamber's Leadership Conference in Sun Valley. Last year, it cost $2,228 for 2 commissioners to drive their own private vehicles to Sun Valley for per diem, for their hotel rooms for 2 nights each, and for the conference registration fees. Why are we going to a leadership conference in Sun Valley so that we can talk to other people from Ada County? Somebody needs to show enough leadership to say, hey guys, we don't need a Sun Valley vacation to handle this kind of thing. I never went just as a matter of principle. I'm sure there's some wonderful information that's being shared there.
Sure. There you go.
But I'm sure there's some wonderful information being shared there. Why don't we do it locally? Buy everybody lunch at I'm not offended by that. Have everybody go at 8 a.m. and stay until 5 p.m. and there's one meal included in the registration fee. But we could do it here locally. Keep the assets here in Ada County or between Ada and Canyon County, Treasure Valley. There's no need to go to Sun Valley and have a hotel room and travel costs and all that.
Fanfare, right.
Right.
And I'm sorry, I interrupted you when you were talking about the county not taking the 3% increases per year in your second term. We were talking about the courthouse. I'm sorry, I derailed that.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I interrupted you. Please continue.
Okay, so we opened the courthouse halfway through my first term. I objected to the financing. During my second term, where we weren't taking that allowable 3% property tax increase in the budget, we still managed to set aside the funds so that in 2015, the first allowable date that it was legal to pay off those bonds were paid off, and that courthouse was paid in full by 2015. In terms of expanding the courthouse, until we have people working at least 6, maybe 7 days a week and coming into work at 6 a.m. and, a shift that's staying until, 10 p.m. in the evening, we aren't really fully utilizing that facility, in my opinion. When you have judges who are there, 8 to 5, 9 to 4 for courtrooms, we're not really fully utilizing the facility as it is. It's the same thing in schools. When my older children were little, I lived in what was known as the Meridian School District. It's now the West Ada School District, and they had opened Pioneer Elementary School on a year-round schedule. Year-round is now being called the modified calendar. But when I first found out about that calendar and that you can put kids in school for nine weeks and then off for 3 and then back in for 9, instead of having a big chunk in the summer, 3 months in a row of time off, you can get 25% more students in each school. And so I worked with a group of people. That school district was constantly asking for new facilities and wanted us to pass bond after bond. And I said, we're going to object to this unless just go tell the parents this is a possibility. This is something we can do with our kids and make better use of our existing facilities. They ended up opening another 4 or 5 elementary schools on that then called year-round schedule, and avoided building another elementary school. We saved the cost of building an entire other facility. The county can take a lesson from that as well. We need to make better use of the facilities we currently have.
Gotcha. So you feel like it would be more appropriate before we expand anything at the courthouse to have people going through court proceedings and whatnot 6 to 7 days a week and longer hours and whatnot to fully maximize. I mean, you don't want anybody working 24-hour shifts.
Not individuals. No,
right.
But stagger employees' time. They already do some of that.
Sure.
Not extensively. I know the clerk's office does that, where you've got somebody coming in at 7 and leaving at 4, and somebody else comes in at 8 and leaves at 5, and the next shift 9 to 6. We need to be doing more of that. The other thing that I would really like to see, the sheriff was onto something with the concept of expanding the availability of facilities where you could go obtain your driver's license, to put something in the western part of the county where people don't have to drive all the way into downtown Boise if they utilize the service in the courthouse.
Oh, interesting. So perhaps have some additional court proceedings or capacity in the west side.
Not necessarily court proceedings. I mean, we'd have to work with the state to see whether that would work. But if you need to go make a payment for your taxes and you need to go to the treasurer's office, having a place in at least West Boise, if not Meridian, or again, Star, Cuna, Eagle, another place where you can go and do those things if you feel the need to do them in person.
Understood. Ada County has, a lot of, it covers a lot of space, obviously, has a lot of different cities, and the growth is really substantial. You have areas, and as a result, some cities are like, hey, look, we can't absorb any more housing. I know Meridian's building a lot more. Eagle itself is building only about like 300-ish houses in the city limits. There are other developments like Dry Creek Ranch that have developed just on the border of cities like Eagle or Cuna or wherever. And these are communities that are drawing on city services but not paying city taxes. Now, that's something that is it's frustrating, I've heard, to some people within the cities. And again, I'm one of the offending parties, right? Living just outside the city borders. But it's also difficult to reconcile that. It's like, okay, well, if the cities can't absorb more people, if you don't want to build more aggressively, if the developers aren't going in there, we have a housing crisis, right? We have a crunch. The reason prices are going up is because there's not an availability. You want prices to come down, you got to make a surplus, and then things start reversing. And of course, there are nuances there with inflation, but what do we do on the county level, right? Is this a model that needs to be used more aggressively, or is this a model that's been used too aggressively and to the detriment of, say, like EMS services and other things coming out of cities?
The concept of a planned community sounds really wonderful on the surface. When you look at it and you look at something like an Avamore that's so far away from all other services, they talk about having to build a certain number of rooftops before they can start providing other services to the people who are living there.
Sure, like a fire department or
Fire
something.
department,
Yeah, yeah.
convenience stores, schools, dentists,
Right.
doctors' offices, grocery store, whatever that service is, those folks are well, let's say overutilizing the road system in the meantime. They're kind of a drag on the rest of the community. I don't blame anybody. It's a beautiful community up there.
Oh, sure.
So
great.
you want to buy a house up there.
Yeah, right.
It from a planning perspective, not great, I think. If a planned community started with an employer right at the center where everybody is going to be employed by that employer, and so you cut down on the number of vehicle trips per day, and you've got schools and everything that everybody needs, and it's truly a planned community, that would be ideal. It's not real. That's not reality.
Right.
The builders are going to build where they can afford to buy the land, where it's reasonably affordable to get services, where you've got a supply for power, natural gas, and so forth. You've got to have those things to build a community these days. There isn't a great answer. I understand the cities. 69% of the people surveyed this past year in the BSU Public Policy Survey said we're growing too fast. But as you and I were talking about earlier, it's not like we can put the fence up around Ada County or around Idaho. I mean, thankfully, we do live in the United States of America. We do have the freedom to pick another place and get up and move to that place. The affordability is a problem. I've been attending some meetings and there are some ways to address it. NeighborWorks is encouraging people to do something they're calling house sharing. If you've got somebody who's been in a house for a number of years, maybe they're elderly, they're alone, if they've got a room or two that they can rent out, either for money or possibly in exchange of services. Somebody will help them with housework, gardening, run their errands for them, better utilize the existing homes. That's one thing we can do.
And that was promoted by NeighborWorks?
NeighborWorks.
Is that like
NeighborWorks
an Idaho?
Boise.
Oh, gotcha.
NeighborWorks Boise.
Okay.
I believe it's a national organization, but we have a branch here in Boise.
Gotcha.
And so that's one thing they're promoting heavily, and they're helping to facilitate this happening.
But Sharon, look, may I ask, would you want a rando coming into your house? Like
they're screening people, they're helping people screen people.
Yeah, right. And you, of course, it's not a random person, but it's like, that sounds like something that in theory, it's like, oh yeah, you can just, because like Mike needs a room and you're like,
if you're a student at BSU and you need a place to stay and you can't afford rent and somebody is willing to let you move into their house and they're going to charge you, say, $250 a month, you can use the living room, the kitchen, the bath, have your own bathroom and a bedroom. And if you'll just mow the yard once a week.
Okay. First off, I'm telling you right now, the second this happens with a BSU student, that person's gonna be like, it's not worth it. Get out. Cause you are a slob. Get your clothes out of the washing machine, clean up your dishes. You're not even a human being. Right. Like
they had some pretty good success stories.
Well, that's
so.
Good.
It's not whether you and I want to do it.
Like, I know. That's an unfair judgment on the program. But like the BSU students they're not the ones creating the housing crunch, right? Like BSU hasn't grown proportionally with the rest of the county. It's not like BSU increased 50% population.
What's interesting? The population in unincorporated Ada County has changed very, very little over the last several decades. It's pretty consistent. Most of the growth actually is happening within the cities.
Sure.
Or the developers are getting annexed into the city when they want to connect to the sewer, or, in Meridian City Water.
Or something. Yeah, sure.
In Boise, it's Veolia. Unfortunately, our water system is owned by a French company.
Right.
But and we can't tell the development community that you're going to go to this place and you're not going to go to that place.
Sure.
And they
sure.
reasonably, as business business people are going to have to find ground they can afford with utilities nearby. And I mean, I personally, I would love to see our fertile farmland preserved, but that's not fair to the development community. That's not fair to people looking for housing. It's not fair to the people who farmed it for 50 years, and that's their retirement income is when they sell that land.
Right.
If they choose to.
Yeah, I was speaking with I interviewed Lori Bishop, who's running for, excuse me, a Senate seat. And she was talking about her dad being a farmer and her family coming from a family farm. She's like, listen, people work this land with the intention of having it as a retirement, either to sell to an additional farmer that they can then use as a revenue producing stream, or to a developer that will change the usage of it, excuse me, and make money through actually building things. She's like, but this is absolutely something that they worked as a retirement plan, right? Just like an office worker would use a 401k as a retirement plan.
Exactly.
So restricting them would almost be like somebody works as an accountant in an office for 40 years. They go to cash in portions of their 401k and they're like, nah, you can't take that.
Right.
It's like, but wait a minute, I thought I got this money. They're like, you did when you started, but now
we're busy using it.
It's, at the growth, you can't have it. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we come and go. It's, in 2008, when I won my second term, we would have done anything to stimulate growth at the time. It's feast or famine, unfortunately. One thing that we can do is check out the budgets for the various government entities. I live outside the city, so I'm not paying city taxes. I'm paying county taxes and school and so forth. But see if your taxing districts are paying to encourage growth. Because there are agencies out there that are encouraging growth.
What do you mean encouraging growth?
Like Boise Valley Economic Partnership, and they're not a bad organization. I don't want you to misunderstand.
They're not the devil. I'm just saying.
But should our taxes be going to an organization that's reaching out, trying to bring more people here? And
they're literally going out of the state and saying, "Hey, is this like the scene from Far and Away when they're like, there's free land in Montana or something?" Like,
well, not
what
free land.
Yeah, no, right. Like,
I mean, we promote Boise, we promote Idaho. Again, maybe make sure we're not using tax dollars. Businesses, they're free to do that, but let's not use tax dollars to promote Idaho while we are having this experience of call it excessive growth. So many people think we are growing too fast, and it's a challenge. Right. We have a lot of people coming. With the Micron fab expansion, they expect to employ 2,000 new people. With those 2,000 new people, they anticipate we need 15,000 more people as support, the teachers, the doctors, the dentists, and so forth. We have a lot more people coming to Idaho in the next few years. So you can laugh at house sharing, but again...
I know I shouldn't. It's just the idea of having like a monkey 20-year-old like living with a like polite, respectable, older person, and they're like, just mow my lawn and you can like rent the room, and then there's just a mess. It's like,
well, and again,
it's an unfair characterization. I recognize.
Heard some anecdotal information about where it has been very successful. It's going to have to be people with certain types of personalities on both sides to make it work, but it can work. Right. One of the things I'm very excited about, I have a friend who's involved with 3D concrete printing. So while we have a shortage of construction workers, right now we've got 3,700 people, or we will have 3,700 construction workers working on the new Micron fab, $15 billion fab. And so, we talked, the jail bond, unfortunately, was poorly timed. This was not the time to go out and get a bid for a construction project because the workers aren't available. The workers are largely tied up working on the Micron fab. And we're going to have housing to support the people that are coming in for that. But I think that at least when the fab is done, there will be more...
a greater supply of skilled labor.
A greater supply of skilled labor available. Exactly.
Right. And you were mentioning the 3D printing.
3D concrete printing uses less labor, and I think the technology is getting better and better. It creates they can do very tiny homes, they can do larger homes, and we're going to have to look at things like new technology to make housing more affordable.
Gotcha. And where does the county play into that, right? Because I think the idea, you don't want to say affordable housing, right? Mm-hmm. But you want to say housing that people can afford, mm-hmm. right? So as if it's a different thing. But mm-hmm. how does the county play into this with, okay, what can the county do to help promote more construction that is readily available, right? Like if you promote construction of 5,000 new units that are all, I don't know, 6,000 square feet, like McMansion neighborhoods and stuff, that's not going to be really serving to take the pressure off the average person. So what could the county do as far as like promoting, tiny house communities, or what are you thinking?
I think that we have to have zoning that allows people who can afford the 6,000 square foot house on the acre of land. Sure. There aren't very many people in our community, I think, who can afford that. For those who can, that's wonderful. There are builders, there are developers who are going to build those communities. For the people who cannot, we do have to look at allowing smaller houses on smaller lots. And we need to make sure that they're compatible in the neighborhoods where they go. You probably don't put the little tiny lots with the little tiny houses right next to the acre lots with the 6,000 right. square foot house. You can feather them in. You can have things that are in between. The county does not drive the housing market. What the county can do is streamline the process, so not unnecessarily delay applications as they're going through the process. And I value the input from the neighbors and so forth. Sometimes there are safety concerns and things that the county does have the ability to address. Hey, you need to put a signalized crosswalk in here because you're going to be bringing all these kids who are going to the neighborhood school over there. That's what the county can do. They can make the process smoother. They can listen to the concerns, but the county can't tell the development community, you are going to build over there and are not going to build over here. I'd like to see the southeast part of the county opened up more. It makes sense to go out that direction. We're not really talking prime agricultural land. And since Micron is out that direction, that's where the biggest need is going to be.
So when you say open up, is there an undue burden or restrictive zoning that's already in existence?
Well, the one burden I'm aware of is that Corey Barton, the Rush Valley community, is not being expanded right now because the city, for good reason, wants a secondary access road. And there's a stalemate right now, I think, between the landowners, and they haven't been able to get the access for the second road. And maybe the government could step in that circumstance and help facilitate an agreement so that can go away, and those homes can be built.
Gotcha. Kind of shifting gears, talk to me about the expo, right? And Parks and Rec. I mean, like one of the interesting things that I heard a long time ago is that some of the reasons that communities that a lot of people have moved from became so nasty was because you didn't have to incentivize people with quality of life to move there. They're like, hey, Silicon Valley is a hub for this type of thing, and you can hyper scale it. You can make a dump truck of money. People want to be part of this. There are very few other places in the world that can offer you this kind of access to this kind of technology. And for those reasons, those areas didn't have to essentially court residents or take care of the quality of life. For other areas like this area, you have an incredible quality of life. You have incredible natural resources like BLM land and hunting and fishing.
This is what we don't want to do. We don't want to let anybody else. I mean,
that's fine. I'm not saying we tell anyone, but for the people here,
right.
How do we maintain? There's a wonderful gentleman by the name of Burke Mantell, actually, who he lives in Eagle, and he writes frequently on Facebook. This is kind of how I got to know Burke. And he would always come on and say like, oh, there were these, I went on this hike or something, and there's all this, torn up couch and like burned pallets and all this garbage. And this is our land. This is public land. And who's monitoring this? Who's cleaning it up? We need to do something better. And I ended up very fortunately saying, "Hey, Burke, why don't you come on and like talk to me about these things?" And he's way into turkeys and hunting and all kinds of stuff. It was an incredible conversation that I did not anticipate. But his points were, "Hey, look, this area is being laid to waste, right? Like we can't do that, right? We need somebody to step up. The city doesn't want to do it. The county's not doing it." And I'm not saying we tell anybody we have these things. Let's be clear. But how do we maintain and upgrade, say, like the Expo Center or at least maintain our open land so that people that have moved here can continue to take advantage of these things to the degree that they have in the past?
Well, I'll tell you one way, and I know they do it on highways. The sheriff's inmate labor detail, and they've renamed it, but where people who would otherwise be in jail actually pay for the supervision, and they go out for 7 or 8 hours and they pick up trash. I see no reason why that couldn't be done in the areas you're talking about, like in the foothills.
Sure.
Same type of deal. Get the big orange bags and so forth.
The jumpsuits, the whole thing. Yeah, right.
And get it done as a community. Absolutely. Identify the need. We've got a resource that can be used. Let's do that.
Gotcha.
And I mean, I'm not for growing government, but if you've got something like that, a project like that, maybe the sheriff's office needs one more employee to supervise one more team, SILT team 5 days a week. I would be all for that.
Gotcha.
And it would pay for itself because, again, the inmates or the not inmates, the people who are staying out of jail by paying for the program are paying for the program themselves.
Gotcha. And then as far as upgrading or at least maintaining other rec areas, what are thoughts?
Well, one thing that I think there have been parks impact fees collected for decades now, including in unincorporated Ada County, which the commissioners are responsible for, but we have allowed as a county, for example, Boise City has been collecting parks impact fees. And yet we've got 160 acres out, McGurdio Park, so between Victory and Amity and Maple Grove and Cole, and that has not been developed into a park. I'm not talking developed housing. I don't want housing there. It's been promised literally for 30 years, give or take, that would be a park, a regional park, that again, to add to the amenities in the community. People who moved in 30 years ago and started paying, paid the impact fee when they had their house built, they've had their kids are grown and through high school and out of the house now, and we still don't have a park there. I would like to see some accountability for those parks impact fees. Where did they go? How have they been spent? Is there money left that has already been collected that can be put into that? And then let's also utilize some of the big, maybe employers and charitable foundations and organizations in the area. Let's actually turn McGurdio Park into the park that it was meant to be. But we need somebody who cares enough about it to push on that issue.
Okay, hang on a sec. You have like a 3-inch thick binder.
I do.
Okay. Do you know where the park impact fees and stuff? You were just saying you'd like to have you asked these questions?
I asked that question when I was in office, my second term, my 4-year term, and we got a very confusing report back. I'd like a chance to try to do it again. I think sitting on the outside as a private citizen, yes, I submit public records requests. Yes, I get some level of information, but it's not the same level of information that you can obtain as a seated elected official, where you can continue to ask questions and not become just an annoyance to the county's employees.
Gotcha. So there's not a real clear answer that you've seen.
I have not seen a real clear answer to where the parks impact fees have gone. I'm sure that some of them, maybe many of them, have indeed been spent on parks, but I'm not sure those parks are in the vicinity of where the fees have been collected.
Oh, now that is one difficult thing. The county and the cities are not growing symmetrically, right? So you will have some degree of we're drawing tax from everywhere, but that tax dollar will find representation in whatever project in a very specific location. Is that something that can be addressed, or is that just kind of the way the cookie crumbles, considering we have such a wide variety of geographic range and tax bases?
Okay, so let's go back to the question you were asking earlier, because I think they're related, where people within the city are paying county taxes, they are, and they're paying taxes to the city. They've chosen to live in the city limits. Some of them haven't. Some of them have been annexed against their will.
Right. There are some Avamore citizens that I've spoken with that didn't want to be part of Eagle, but they became part of Eagle.
Right. Or out in the Southwest.
Right. However, I don't mean to pick on Avamore. It's just.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't bring this with you. You can no. Get comfortable. Lean back. Go wherever you want. This thing moves. Just take it with you wherever you want to go.
Okay.
There you go.
So
we were talking about city and county taxes versus just
city and county taxes. It's a symbiotic relationship because people who live in the county and aren't paying city taxes do utilize city services, but they also go to city businesses, restaurants and dry cleaners and so forth. And so there is money coming from those folks into the city. I'm not sure there is a perfect solution to that problem. As a county commissioner, you represent people both within the city limits and outside the city limits, everybody within the county. And even though we run for county commissioner by district, according to where you live, I live in District 3, so I'm running for the 4-year term this time around. But everybody in Ada County votes for the 2 positions that are up at any given 2-year period. And I don't forget that. I know that you don't just represent the people in unincorporated Ada County. You do make development decisions only for unincorporated Ada County. The people who live in the city have that different level of representation with the city council.
Right. But again, so you're drawing taxes from all the entire county, and some projects like a recreation project, park project, something like that might be developed. Well, naturally has to be developed in one place, right? Like you can't do one project in multiple places, but there's nothing to be done about that in particular, correct? Like people will get taxed in, say, CUNA that might fund a project, like near Avamore or something.
The county does very little in parks.
Gotcha.
We've got Lady Bird Park near Expo, Idaho, and they're developing some kind of park now near the river. When I was in office, we were trying to actually exchange the land at the corner for the land near the river. And I'm not sure that's actually that. I don't think that has gone through. I think it's being added instead now that horse racing has been shut down permanently. And we've got Barber Park. I would say that Barber Park, when with tubing on the Boise River, you've got people who are in CUNA and they're going to come out to Barber Park and do that.
Oh yeah, it's the best.
It's a county-wide amenity, right?
Oh yeah,
and so it's not within city limits, but it is a county-wide amenity. We've got Expo Idaho, which is circled by Garden City and Boise, but it's unincorporated Ada County. In the donut hole is unincorporated Ada County. And that, of course, is a county-wide amenity. People come from all over the county to utilize it. So even with McGurdio Park, I'm not looking at using county resources to develop McGurdio Park beyond let's go out and find some funding sources so that we can turn that into a park and make it another community amenity. It's not centrally located, but it depends on where you are in the county, what you consider centrally located. It's very close to Boise city limits. And we don't have a regional park out in that area. So for the folks who live out in that area who have to come in to use Julia Davis or Ann Morrison, let's contain that traffic out in the Southwest by putting a park out there.
And when you say you're not interested in using county resources, but go out and find some funding, like what would that funding be? Was that the partnership with like other businesses and things?
That's
of that
what
nature?
I'm thinking.
Yeah,
that,
gotcha.
You've got the J.R. Simplot baseball fields. You've got the Micron soccer fields. The Albertson,
whatever.
A botanical garden whatever.
Let's give some naming rights and get a park. Let's make it happen.
And again, in terms of resources, if you've got an elected commissioner who is interested in pushing on that issue, that can make it happen. The Parks Department has expanded since I was there from, I believe, 5 employees to 10. I'm not quite sure what all 10 people are doing. So I say I don't want to use county resources, but if maybe we've got a couple of people in the Parks Department who can do some grant writing, let's better utilize the people who are working for the county now.
The theme of efficiency and
Yes.
and superior utilization seems to be coming up a lot with you.
That's what it's all about for me.
So you feel like that in general I don't want to put words in your mouth. Do you feel like in general that we do have the resources required, we do have the workforce required to better improve the lives of the county in general without spending and in fact perhaps even reducing the tax burden?
Absolutely. I believe that. I not only believe it, I've lived it during my 6 years as a commissioner. My first term, for example, I won the election in November of 2000, and the sheriff's office immediately started lobbying me, saying we need a new radio communications system. I care a lot, very deeply about law enforcement, public safety, emergency services. So I was listening very carefully to what they were saying. But they wanted to spend $10 million on an 800 megahertz system that they said we needed. And I that's a whole lot of money. Let's look at this very carefully. Asked a lot of questions, talked about it publicly, got feedback that, hey, you really don't want an 800 megahertz system. There's interference from cell phones. So not a great system. Well, the sheriff's office went back and did some more research and homework and came back with a proposal for a different system. I'm thinking a 700 megahertz system, but don't quote me on that. And it cost $3 million instead of $10 million. I can get behind that, and did. So $7 million saved that, you don't ask enough questions and you just throw the money at the problem. Doesn't solve the problem. Right. We had a new dispatch system that was not working. And I believe this was my second term. And the dispatchers came to me because they knew that of the elected officials, I would listen to them. I spent time in dispatch with the dispatchers. I saw the system malfunction. And there were other people who said, oh, that's just bugs. It's,
Right.
Months later, we started having fire chiefs and other elected officials in the community say, wait a minute, this is a problem. This isn't working. This is putting people at risk. I am willing to listen. I'm willing to listen to the public. I'm willing to listen to the employees. Good decisions need to be made. I do my homework. I do the research.
Listen, I can see that.
It's only a 2-inch binder.
Oh
but
my God.
It was a 1-inch binder and I had to expand.
Yeah, I'm surprised you were able to get that in the 2-inch binder. Mm-hmm. You mentioned something I did want to ask. What do we do with EMS services? Because I have a dear friend, and she also has a podcast, and she's been this champion for EMS services. Mm-hmm. And because of that, I've met a lot of other people that are talking about, hey, look, we have like volunteer EMS services in some areas. We have people that literally are driving ambulances for free. Right. And the people that have heart attacks or strokes are relying on these people that are not being compensated to get them to the doctors at the hospital. I know that Brian Simpson, actually, the fire commissioner, Eagle Fire District, related in an interview that I believe it was his dad or his grandfather was a volunteer Eagle firefighter, which I was like, God, that's crazy. Like, oh yeah, like fire alarm would go off and, all the kids would like grow up together because we're all, or maybe it doesn't matter. But the point is that seems very romantic and great and like awesome. But it's 2024 and we're trying to get people to like the hospital and stuff. So it seems that, I don't know, am I missing something with the need for more?
I'm not aware that that's happening in Ada County.
Okay.
When you're in Boise County, yeah, you might get somebody who's a volunteer who's, on call. But in Ada County, our paramedics and Ada County paramedics and Ada County EMS, everybody is paid.
Yeah.
Everybody's on a payroll.
Right. And perhaps I misspoke. There are people in Idaho volunteering. Okay,
Correct.
Let me be clear. There are also people within Ada County that are saying we are stretched too thin and the response times are too great. Okay. So again, not, there are instances where people are volunteering. I should not have related that to Ada County specifically. It's a broader issue that I've been talking to people about with essentially the Southwest Idaho. But anyway, the point is, do you think that's something that needs to be addressed?
When Ada County paramedics, I was the liaison to that department, and my philosophy changed over time as I got to know more about the subject matter. I was trying to promote a positive relationship between the Boise Fire Department and Ada County EMS because for a while it was strained. And so I was pushing for the concept that, hey, we've got a few stations where we've got Boise Fire and we've got Ada County EMS co-located. They're all there together. They can be friends. This is really good for the working relationship. Sure. And I had my EMS director point out to me, if we have more points on the map, then somebody can get there faster when we receive a call. By co-locating, everybody leaves at the same time and everybody gets there at the same time. We're actually better off by having more points on the map, more stations, whether they are firefighters who are trained in basic EMS, paramedics, whether there are Ada County paramedics, that the more stations we have, the faster we are going to be able to get there. And so my philosophy changed from, okay, we still need to promote the positive working relationship. I still think that's a very worthy goal. You need to have good communication back and forth. The agencies that are working together, you all get there. There are more Boise fire stations. Typically, they arrive sooner. They stabilize the patient. We come in with people with more expertise and assist and transport to the hospital if necessary. It's a system I think that works pretty well. Are there places it can be improved? I haven't been with the county since January of 2013. I don't know that it's broken. There's always room for improvement, in my opinion.
Great. And again, if I implied that it was broken, it's just something that people have said, hey, look, with the development, right, with increase, with asymmetrical growth throughout different areas, you have, for lack of a better word, to some degree, dead spots where it's like, hey, look, they didn't have to be serviced to a large degree in years past, but now there are a lot more people there. Yeah, things of that nature. And obviously haven't been there since. And
you are the first person who's brought that up during this campaign. Or I would have a section on it in my binder.
Where's the homework, Sharon? Here we go. Wonderful. Well, listen, we've talked about all the things I want to talk about, but you have a huge binder. Like, is there something we've missed? Is there something you want to specifically hit on or chat about?
Sure. We can talk about some of the things that have been raised as issues in this campaign.
That'd be great.
For example, the fentanyl crisis. What can Ada County do about fentanyl? Ada County works with Central District Health Department. Central District Health is making the antidote to the fentanyl, Narcan, available. And I believe, if I understand the program correctly, if, for example, we have paramedics who go out to a call and it's a drug call, they can actually leave Narcan behind for, if there's another incident. The Idaho Department of Health and Welfare is also making Narcan readily available. In terms of Ada County going to the Mexican border and stopping the fentanyl from coming in,
unlikely.
It's not really something that Ada County commissioners have any kind of authority to do. I will tell you that I've researched the issue and that most of the fentanyl is actually coming across, or that's being caught, is coming across with people who legally have a right to come into the United States. So if you want to stop it from coming altogether, we're going to literally have to shut down the border. I don't see that happening. I wouldn't have the authority as an Ada County commissioner to do anything about it. But if you want a solution, that would be the solution. Shut down the border altogether.
Gotcha.
It's a federal issue.
Yeah,
it's a federal issue. We need Congress. We need the president, Congress, to do something about it.
Right. And again, when you're dealing with drugs, you're dealing with mental health issues and, promoting better lifestyles or warding off diseases of despair is always something that I'm sure Central Health is worried about. So it's kind of, the fentanyl crisis is so crazy because there have always been drugs flowing through our communities, which is not great, right? Like nobody's saying that. And, alcoholism happens,
Right.
nobody's saying that's not okay. But it's the effectiveness of the drug that and the randomness and variability of the strength of it that people get. With Representative Hill, I've talked a lot about this because he had the mandatory minimum bill. Excuse me. And I also worked with, did several interviews with the Fraternal Order of Police individuals talking about these different things. And it's just such a horrible, horrible drug that, you might have as a drug user, a certain type of practice with a certain quantity that you engage in or frequency, whatever. But because fentanyl is such a threshold drug and so little of it can change how, you'll either get through or you'll die. Essentially there's not a ramp up kind of phase with it. It's that's a tough one.
It is. One of the things that the county has historically done, and it's mandated by the state. Almost all of what the county does is mandated by the state of Idaho, by the way. I refer to Ada County or to county government in Idaho as the local branch of your state government. So there are some choices as to how you do it, but what you do is largely dictated by the state.
Gotcha.
So one of the things the county does, the county is the payer of last resort for people who are medically indigent. If they have an emergency or utilize any kind of medical services and don't have the income to pay their medical bills, then the doctors, the hospitals come to the county looking to get their bills paid at 95% of the Medicaid rate, which the providers have to accept as payment in full. And when we had the Medicaid expansion in Idaho, the counties, that division of the county shrunk significantly. But the state is now kicking people off Medicaid, rightfully, wrongfully. I'm not here to argue that point. If somebody should not be on it, they should not be on it. But that is going to kick more of those people back to the county level. And I say the county is the payer of last resort. The county pays up to $11,000 for any individual in any given year. If the medical bills are higher than that, which frequently they are much higher than that for any kind of an emergency, then we as state taxpayers at our other level of paying, we pay the rest of the bills. And so one of the things that I did as a commissioner was worked with Idaho State University, and then we added a whole bunch of partners, Central District Health, Idaho Department of Health and Welfare, St. Al's, St. Luke's, and then later on the sliding scale clinics in the area. And we had Idaho State University health science students actually doing preventive health screenings. They weren't providing health care, but they were screening, be it for, mental health issues or alcoholism or high cholesterol or high blood pressure. The very first one of these screenings that we did, I was told by medical people, I am not one of them, that somebody came to that screening whose blood pressure was so high, they were immediately sent to the emergency room, and it probably saved their life, which was not my goal, but was amazingly rewarding to think that by intervening like we had done, by setting up a program like this, that it had such amazing consequences. Over a period of years, over 1,000 people were screened in this way. And it benefits the community in multiple ways. You've got your ISU health science students getting hands-on experience, so you're going to have better healthcare providers when they graduate. You are keeping people out of the emergency room, people who have no health insurance or health care. The only place they can go and get health care is to the local emergency room, which is the least efficient in terms of dollars spent for providing health care to people. So we were clearing out the emergency rooms potentially of people who had issues that could, somebody has high blood pressure, maybe they need diet, exercise, medication. That can be provided by one of the sliding scale clinics without the utilization of the emergency room. So we're benefiting the community by making ER space more available, and saving tax dollars. Because what kind of got me thinking about this program, the head of our Indigent Services Department came to us and said, do you know we had 5 patients whose medical bills added up to more than $1 million for just 5 people. And even if we, the county level, only paid $11,000 of that for each of those 5 people.
Right.
The rest of that, at least the Medicaid rate for those bills that were due, we were paying that as state taxpayers. If we can catch the person who's got, the blood pressure example, the high blood pressure before they have the stroke, before they have the heart attack,
Right.
keep them out of the emergency room, improve their health. Everybody wins. That program actually did survive after I left office, even though I wasn't there kind of promoting it and egging them on. Unfortunately, COVID killed that program. When ISU had to back off and not have the interaction with community members. That's something that I'm pretty passionate about. I'd love to get restarted. ISU, their staffing has changed, and it's really a matter of, it's not starting from scratch because we know what worked, we know what didn't, but picking up the ball and running with it again.
That's great.
If I get elected again, I'd love to go get that program up and running again for the benefit of the entire community.
Right. Well, Sharon, thank you so much. This has been great. You are a wealth of knowledge. It's so cool to hear about the past experiences and the programs you've put forth and the different ideas. Again, I really appreciate it.
You know, there were a couple you asked, is there anything else I want to talk about?
Please.
One of the things the county does, the county takes property when somebody doesn't pay their taxes for 3 years in a row. The county will sell their property. And that's a process, a legal procedure that commissioners, with our legal staff would go through. And I cannot tell you what it was. I'll call it women's intuition. We had one situation where there was a homeowner who hadn't paid their taxes for 3 years. And, we have a list of these properties, and this was one of them. Something didn't feel right to me. And I can't remember exactly why or what it was, but I said, time out, wait a minute. On this one, we need to look into this more. We need more answers. It turned out it was a woman who'd been widowed 3-4 years earlier and just shut down and stopped functioning. And if we had just gone through the motions and said, this is our job, we take the property, the taxes haven't been paid, we would have added to that woman's burden by making her homeless, by taking her home away from her. But instead, I worked with the county treasurer, we worked with the Office on Aging, and they have the people who were able to approach this woman and actually provide the assistance she needed to kind of get her life back on track. And so it's not all these big issues that we talk about. The position of commissioner, there are some things that can be done that for me are, again, life-altering, that you really need to be able to think things through and look at things from a broader perspective.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah. That's a really tough situation. It's very cool that you were able to catch that. Yeah.
And again, I really don't remember what it was that struck me as
some form of intuition. Yeah.
Something was wrong about it. Yeah.
Man, good for you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you for coming in. I appreciate you. Good luck with the campaign. Thanks for everything you've done in the past, and thanks for running it. I mean, no matter what, participation in the campaign, right? Participation, bringing issues to the forefront, things for people to address. It's hugely important, win, lose, or draw. So thank you for what you're doing.
And there's value to me in the running, whatever the election results, because I have had the opportunity to research all of these issues. When I was in office, I wrote articles that my first term were in the Valley Times and Cunamaba News. My second term, since the internet had expanded, I have a blog. It's still there. Everything I wrote during my second term is still out there. I've added a few things to it in the meantime about county government. Talk about
and how can people find this?
SharonU.com.
Okay.
And the blog, you go to the page with the blog, and you can read all my posts and see I've got real ideas about, we hear a lot of candidates say, I'm going to slash the budget, we need to cut spending, but have no ideas on how to make that work. What are they going to do? And I would encourage voters to ask that question. What will you cut? How are you going to do it? And I have my most recent post, I give some very specific examples. Here are things I'd like to address. These are ways in which we can rein in that spending.
Awesome. So SharonU.com.
Yes.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
MTU Studios is the proud producer for the Ada County Sheriff Podcast, the Idaho Wildlife Federation Podcast, the State Representative Ted Hill Podcast, the Idaho State PTA Podcast, and many more. If you or your organization is thinking about starting a podcast, MTU Studios would love to help. Just check out mtustudios.com.